Welcome back, everyone. We're about to take a deep dive today into Sura Al-Tin.
Really fascinating one this is.
Now, 8 verses, you might think. 8 verses. How much can we really, unpack there?
It's a short surah.
It's short, but trust me, there's a lot there. And we're going to see how this connects the perfection of human creation and kind of the stages of our growth and our decline and our ultimate resurrection.
And it does all of that in such a beautiful and concise way. I think that's what makes this surah so incredible.
Absolutely. And there's a hadith about this surah which says that reciting it brings health and certainty in this life.
Oh, wow.
And in the afterlife, a reward equivalent to the fasting days of everyone who's ever recited it. So, we should all be reciting this surah all the time.
That's quite an incentive to really understand it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the surah itself, and we're going to go verse by verse. And right away, from the very beginning, we are met with symbolism by the fig and the olive.
Yeah, right off the bat.
It's not what you'd expect, right?
No, it's not your typical opening.
It's like a riddle. What's going on here?
Right. And you're right to point that out because the symbolism is a really important part of understanding this surah. In Arabic, these are called oaths. So when Allah swears by something, it's not random. It's actually emphasizing the importance of what's about to be said. And in this case, it's the fig and the olive. There's a lot we can unpack there.
So, what is it about the fig and the olive? I've heard there are many different interpretations of what these two things mean.
There are, and I think each one kind of adds to our understanding. So some scholars say that the fig and the olive are just literal. They're talking about their nutritional value, their medicinal value. Both of these fruits have been sustaining people for centuries in this region.
Like these are the things that allow humanity to flourish, right?
Yeah, to reach that potential. Yeah. Exactly.
To thrive.
Yeah, to thrive. And then others see it as more symbolic. So some associate them with specific locations like mountains in Damascus or Jerusalem, and they connect them to the prophets who lived in those areas.
So the fig and the olive kind of become these symbols of prophetic guidance, of these divine messages that have shaped humanity's path.
Yeah, precisely. And then there's another interpretation that connects them to the eras of Adam and Noah. So the fig, with its leaves used for covering in the Garden of Eden, they say this represents Adam's story, kind of the beginning of humanity. And the olive, which was brought back by the dove as a sign of hope after the Great Flood, this represents Noah's story and that promise of renewal.
Wow, so each interpretation adds another layer of meaning.
Yeah.
We have sustenance, we have guidance, we have origins, we have renewal.
It's like this multifaceted gem, and it reflects all these different aspects of our existence.
It's amazing, yeah. And that's what I love about the Quran. There's always more to uncover. There's always more to discover.
Always something new.
All right, so moving on to verse 3, we have another oath. And by this secure city, so now we're getting a bit more specific.
We are. And this city is Makkah. And what's interesting is that even before Islam, Makkah was considered a safe haven. It was a place where peace was upheld. Violence was forbidden.
It's amazing how it's retained that kind of significance.
Yeah, I think it speaks to that innate human need, to have a place of safety and peace. And that's what the surah is reminding us of by invoking Makkah.
And it's interesting, the word fig actually only appears in the Quran in this surah, but the word olive is mentioned 7 times throughout the Quran. I don't know, just something to think about.
That's a good observation. It's hard to say for sure, but those numerical occurrences in the Quran often have a deeper meaning. So maybe it's pointing to the abundance of blessings associated with the olive, or its connection to completeness, because the number 7 is often associated with that.
That's really interesting. Okay, verse 4, we're getting to the heart of the matter. Indeed, we created man in the best of stature. Now this raises some questions. What does it mean to be created in the best of stature? Does it mean we're all physically perfect? Morally superior? What does that mean?
That's a great question. And I think the answer lies in understanding the word taqwim, which is often translated as stature. But in Arabic, it means so much more. It's about our balanced nature as humans, our physical, spiritual, intellectual faculties.
So it's like we've been given the best possible form, the potential to achieve great things.
Exactly. And that ties back to the elements we talked about in those first few verses, right? So you have the fig and the olive representing that nourishment and sustenance we need to thrive physically. You have Mount Sinai, the place of revelation, representing our spiritual potential. And then you have Makkah, that secure city, representing the need for social harmony, a safe environment to flourish.
It's like all the ingredients for human flourishing.
Yeah, exactly. And this raises the question, Are we creating those conditions in our own lives? Are we nurturing our well-being on all those levels?
Okay, but then verse 5 seems to contradict this idea of human perfection. Then we can turn him to the lowest of the low. What's going on here? Why this sudden shift?
This is where it gets really interesting. This verse is highlighting the duality of our nature. You know, we have the capacity for greatness, but also for degradation. Our best of stature is not a given. It's a potential we can either reach or squander.
It's not like saying all humans are inherently flawed. It's about the choices we make and how those choices can lead us astray.
Exactly. And that's where free will comes in. We're given this incredible blueprint for existence, but we're free to choose how we live, whether we nurture that potential or let it wither away.
And that's a pretty sobering thought. You know, this verse is saying our choices have consequences, not just in this life, but in the next as well.
It is, and it sets us up perfectly for what's coming next.
Yeah, it definitely does. Because the next verse gives us, well, it gives us a bit of hope, I think. You know, amidst all this talk of decline, it shows us that there's a way out.
So we're talking about verse 6. Except for those who believe and do righteous deeds, for they will have a reward uninterrupted. Okay, so how do we avoid this lowest the low situation? What exactly does it mean to believe and do righteous deeds? And what's this about an uninterrupted reward?
Yeah, great questions. This verse is introducing a really important concept in Islam, and that is the connection between faith and action. It's saying that belief alone is not enough. True faith has to show up in our actions. It has to show up in how we live our lives.
So our actions should reflect our beliefs.
Exactly. And the reward for that, for living that way, is described as uninterrupted. So it's this continuous state of bliss, of fulfillment in the afterlife. It's not temporary. It's not going to fade away. It's this eternal state of being close to Allah. It's amazing how the surah contrasts these two potential outcomes, right? Like you can descend to the lowest of the low, or you can ascend to this uninterrupted reward.
Yeah, it's powerful imagery, and it really emphasizes that, you know, our choices, they matter. They have a real impact on where we end up.
It's almost like a wake-up call.
Yeah, like, hey, pay attention. You're not just a passive passenger in life. You have a say in how this story unfolds.
We have the power to shape our own destiny.
We do, but that also means we have to take responsibility.
And that leads us to verse 7, which seems to be a challenge to those who deny this whole concept. So what yet causes you to deny the recompense? It feels very personal, this question.
It does. It's like it's asking each of us to look inward, to examine our own hearts. And the word recompense here, in Arabic, it's deen, and that's a really important word. It's often translated as judgment or way of life, religion even. It has these layers of meaning.
So it's not just about reward and punishment in the afterlife.
Not at all. It's much bigger than that. It's like, look, you know about your creation, you know about your potential, you see the consequences of actions, so why deny the whole framework for a meaningful life?
It's about denying a whole way of life.
Exactly. And if we think about the flow of the surah, it makes sense. It starts with the perfection of our creation, our potential, then it warns us about our potential to fall, and then it ends with this reminder of Allah's justice, of ultimate accountability.
And then it asks, why deny it?
Why deny it? Yeah. Like, if you see the beauty of your creation, the importance of your choices, the certainty of justice, why would you reject the path that leads to good?
It makes you think, doesn't it? What are we holding on to that makes us resist this idea? What are we afraid of?
Tough questions, but I think they're worth asking. And that brings us to the last verse of Sura Al-Tin, which in a way offers an answer. It's almost an affirmation.
Verse 8. Is not Allah the most just of judges? It doesn't even sound like a question, really. It's like a statement of fact.
It is, and it's phrased so beautifully, don't you think? It's not a threat. It's more like an invitation to contemplate divine justice, you know?
The wisdom and mercy of Allah. Exactly. It's saying, remember, we're not dealing with some random, unpredictable force here. There's a wise and compassionate judge who sees everything.
It's like that idea of the fig and the olive, the cycle of life. It's all part of a larger plan.
Yes. And within that plan, even our mistakes, even those moments where we fall short, they can serve a purpose. They become chances to learn, to repent, to turn back to the right path.
It's not about being perfect. It's about acknowledging our potential and striving to be better. It's about moving closer to that best of stature.
Exactly. And there's another layer of meaning here that we haven't touched on yet. It's in the language itself. That word deen, it has a deeper meaning than we've explored so far.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm always fascinated by how one word can open up a whole new understanding.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? One word can really shift our whole perspective.
Absolutely. And with Dean, I think understanding those different layers of meaning can really help us appreciate the depth of that last verse and actually the whole surah.
Okay, so what are some of those other meanings? How does that change the way we understand that question? What causes you to deny the deen?
Well, Dean can refer to recompense, like it's translated here, but it can also mean judgment, way of life, even religion itself.
Wow, so it's not just asking why we deny reward and punishment after we die. It's much bigger than that.
Right, it is. It's almost like, Allah is saying, look, you understand how perfectly you've been created. You understand your potential. You see the consequences of your actions. So how can you deny the whole system, the whole framework that leads to a truly meaningful life?
It's not just about the afterlife. It's about denying a whole way of living, a way of being in the world.
Exactly. And if you look at how the surah unfolds, it makes sense. It starts by talking about how perfect our creation is, our potential for good. Then it warns us about falling, about going to the lowest of the low,
And then it reminds us about Allah's justice.
about accountability. Yeah. And then it asks, why deny all of this?
Why deny it?
Yeah, exactly. If you understand how beautifully you were created, if you understand how important your choices are, if you see how certain justice is, then why would you reject this path that leads to good?
That's a really powerful way to look at it.
It is. It makes us think about what we're holding on to. Why are we resisting this idea? What are we afraid of?
It's like that fear is preventing us from truly embracing what could be a much better way to live.
Hmm.
And it's not just about us as individuals, right? It affects everyone. It affects the whole world.
Absolutely. Denying the deen, it doesn't just hurt us. It undermines our ability to create a just world, a good society.
It's like rejecting the blueprint for something better.
Exactly. And accepting it, embracing it, well, that has the opposite effect.
Right. It allows us to reach our full potential, not just individually, but as a community.
It does. Remember that word taqwim, that balance, that potential for goodness. That's not just for each of us alone. It's for all of us together.
That makes me think about the uninterrupted reward we talked about. That sense of peace and fulfillment, it's not just an individual thing either. It's about creating that for everyone.
You're absolutely right. And that's what's so powerful about Sura Al-Tin. In just 8 verses, it takes us on this journey.
Yeah, we start with the wonder of creation,
And then the potential of humanity,
the importance of our choices.
the certainty of Allah's justice.
And it leaves us with this question: what causes us to deny this path, this way of life? But it also gives us a way forward.
It does. It reminds us of Allah's mercy, of the possibility of turning back, of choosing a better path.
It's a reminder that no matter what, there's always hope, always a chance to reach for that best of stature, that potential for good within each of us.
So beautifully said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Sura Al-Tin. I hope it's given you something to reflect on, to consider in your own life. And until next time, may your journey be filled with knowledge, wisdom, and a deepening connection to the divine.